Well, welcome to my next free tutorial Friday. And this episode, I'm heavy into finishing my How to Draw book with Thomas Bertling. And we're into the chapters now of doing some how-to step-by-steps. And this is my warm-up, one of my warm-ups for creating the content for that chapter, which is one of the later chapters in the book. So this little quick video is just going to be how I go about doing some really quick loose sketches. And I like to start with Copic markers. And so I start with like I think if I can see it on the end of that marker, it's probably a T1, it looks like. So it's a 1% or a 10% gray. Usually I actually use a T0, which is just enough for me to see, but I used a T1 here because it shows up a little better on the video. So you can see what I'm doing. Basically, I just draw it, with a light marker because it gives me a lot of freedom to make mistakes, and I can go back over it with the heavy line work and sort of make a nice looking sketch. And you see, I usually start there with like a simple perspective grid, find my center line, define my verticals. This is all the sort of stuff we'll be covering in the book in of course, greater depth than this quick video. But you can get the gist of it. So for me, I'm always drawing through everything, right? So it's got the center lines, a couple of quick sections, and then just guessing at a lot of the foreshortening. Like I didn't plan out and properly foreshorten the length of that fuselage. So at this point, it's just, guesswork and estimation. And but it's fun, and I'm also being limited there by the size of my screen. So I'm trying to keep all these drawings within the screen. The other thing that's a little tricky with doing this type of drawing for a video instead of in my sketchbook is that I usually spin the page quite a bit to get nicer line work, as you'll see towards the end. But in this case, I just kept the position fixed so that it would look nicer for you on this quick little video. So here I just roughed out the wings. And I do like a lot of these exploratory sketches like this, just trying to find design directions that I might want to go back and really build out the model in a much more, and I always call things models and building as opposed to illustrations and drawing, because for me it's always about seeing and imagining the object actually being a real three-dimensional model, whether it's for a video game or a movie or actually built. So you see this exact same process starting here with this sketch, which is put down, it's a little one-point perspective and side view tip up. And I put in some guidelines first, then start working out my center line next, which is the same exact process I used for the other sketch on the right for that elevated front three-quarter view. And just roughing it out and exploring the forms a bit with marker. And like I said, working with light marker is very nice, because if you need to go back and when you do your line work and make changes and extend and modify the proportions, you can do that and just leave the marker there, and then it's really easy to scan it, go into Photoshop, and I have a brush just set to color dodge to pure white, and just go around and color dodge around the silhouette, and that's a way to really quickly clean up that marker that's sort of left over. And you'll see what I do here next is I follow up with some ballpoint pens. So this was about 20 minutes of real-time sketching. I've sped it up to double time, so we're a little over about 10 minutes. So I guess each one of these is probably a little less than 7 minutes apiece, all total. And you'll see I come back with a ballpoint next. So I'm roughly halfway, so a little less than halfway. And that was when the marker was done. So the marker allows me to explore, and then I come back with ballpoint pen, sketch over the top, and refine. Because I really don't know what that shape is inside there. I don't know if that's going to be a hole. Is that going to be just a graphic? Is that going to be some sort of bump on the surface? I really don't know that when I'm doing that with the marker, but I have to come back and refine it now with the pen. And so I really look into those marker shapes and values and just see if I can find, interesting alignments, interesting forms. It's a way to sort of not only explore the shapes with marker without ruining your your sketch, but also to kind of stimulate your brain to seeing other shapes that you might not have drawn if you started with a pen. So it's kind of a way to do a pen sketch, but allows you a little bit of exploration and freedom. I don't know if that circle is going to be a vent later or if that's going to be a graphic, some sort of a handle or something, who knows. But in a quick sketch, it doesn't really matter. It's just a little visual detail. And later, if I was to like this, if I like this design and I wanted to refine it further, then I would go in and modify it. And I should say these aren't meant to be all the same plane in each view. It's just exploring shapes and proportions, mostly kind of overall proportions, trying to get my silhouette working, proportions of fuselage to wing to rudder to elevator, those kinds of things. And then these might be things, if I liked a direction, then I would go back and spend more time and draw out a much more accurate perspective grid, work out the foreshortening. Like if I was going to take this side view into perspective, I would then come back, probably draw a box grid over the top, use a circle, start to measure across, find how many squares tall is it versus how many squares long, and then I would be able to draw that foreshortened plane in any view with the techniques that we'll put into the book. And then you could draw it, the same exact proportion plane in multiple views, really any view you want to finish it out. So here, just defining a four-bladed prop at the front of this little airplane, putting in the cockpit, front glass. You see I always sort of draw my center line, especially when they're just quick drawings for myself. These kind of what I would call, exploratory reference sketches. You might be looking at some reference and trying to draw some original designs influenced by other designs you're looking at. In this case, these are all just make-believe. And I mean, they're all kind of single seat, sort of rearward positioned cockpit, prop driven at the front. So they're all similar, but not meant to be the same plane. And you can see now that my marker through there was very loose, and so I'm going back now and changing it quite a bit with my ballpoint pen, and deciding to add another little control surface back there on the side of the fuselage at the tail, which wasn't in my marker sketch. So you can take as much, have as much creative freedom as you like. It doesn't lock you down, which is nice. And I'm just sort of roughing out and guessing at my symmetry there, left and right, adding some ailerons out there on the top surface of the wingtip, and just loosely putting in a ellipse there at the front. It sort of sets the degree of that ellipse all the way through, or at least at the front. And then of course, it transitions. It's in 1-point perspective. Actually, it's interesting that 1-point perspective, like this side view tip up, is actually a lot harder to draw than a 2-point perspective. And it's because as the sections go through the fuselage, for instance, right in the middle, they're basically a straight line. And then out, you can see near the propeller, we actually see, the back side of that section. And then if we go back to the tail or the cockpit, right, then we'd see sort of the front side of sections through there. And you get a huge difference in the foreshortening from a near side wingtip to the far side wingtip. So in a way, everybody thinks, well, 1-point perspective is always the easiest, and it gets harder as you go into 2-point, 3-point, etc. It's actually not the case that I've found. I think that actually 1-point is probably the hardest, especially to draw these sort of round forms, if you're trying to draw them accurately. And it's because the sections change so much in this side view tip up, especially through the fuselage, and the dramatic foreshortening from the foreground to the background across your shape. Or even if you look at the one to the right, that elevated front 3/4, the sections across the fuselage from front to back are basically, they're all very similar. So there, the fuselage would be relatively easy, even though it's quite foreshortened. The sections would be easy to do. The sections across the wing, though, in this case, are back kind of in being just like in 1-point, and those again are tougher to draw. So adding a couple little last details, and this is going to pretty much wrap it up, I think, and I've got another minute to go. So I hope you like this quick one. This week I'm really busy. Currently we've got a Moto Design Workshop weekend coming up, so we're busy here at the studio the next 2 days, Saturday, Sunday. and then crazy busy trying to finish this drawing book. So happy I could at least squeeze in this quick demo for you. So I think that'll do it. Have a great week.